Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Fantasy Baseball Advice Weekend Recap with your host, Alec Pecano. Let's get right to it. First, we're going to start off with some fantasy baseball news. Pirates are calling up 3 different prospects, and I will tell you all about them in this slide. The first one is pitcher Quinn Priester. He's being called up to make his major league debut tonight. I would recommend stashing him in points leagues. He's not going to get you a lot of strikeouts. He's a ground ball pitcher extraordinaire. And the second prospect, the second guy I'm going to talk about is A's infielder Zach Geloff, who was called up last week. As you can see, the A's are probably going to sell off a bunch of guys at the deadline, so Zach Geloff is going to get a lot of playing time. Next, I'm going to talk about his teammate in Mr. Tyler Soderstrom. Soderstrom was also called up last weekend, and he's going to get a lot of playing time too at catcher and first base. Mostly first base, I would say, because you have Shea Langeliers catching. The Pirates are also calling up catching prospect Indy Rodriguez. I think he's going to see most of the work behind the plate. I don't know what the corresponding move is, whether they're DFAing one of their other catchers and Austin Hedges or Jason DeLay. But Indy Rodriguez is going to get most of the playing time catching. The next prospect I'm going to talk about is Liover Pagaro, also with the Pirates. He's the third of the 3 prospects that the Pirates are calling up to the big leagues. He is a shortstop, and I think he's going to get a lot of time at short until O'Neal Cruz comes back. And Grace, the last guy I'm going to talk about that I have on here is Grayson Rodriguez being recalled to the big leagues by the Orioles. He will start tonight for the Orioles. He has a 2-start week. He is not in my news segment that I'm debuting today that you will see in a little bit. But I do recommend picking him up and stashing him on your bench. And I apologize for at the beginning of the stream, my mic being muted. As before the stream, I was doing some stuff around this video to make it a bigger one. Now, let's get to my player of the weekend. And it's an unlikely candidate. Royals outfielder Drew Waters. In 3 games with the Rays, 2 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday, he went 4 for 10 with 4 runs batted in. He's a guy that I would think, if you're desperate enough and you need outfield help, he does get some stolen bases. He has a little bit of pop, a little bit of power. I would recommend picking him up and stashing him on your bench and playing, and he could help you win a championship. You never know. Next segment. Here is my waiver wire players under 75% rostered in fantasy baseball, and there are some new names on here. The first one is Bryce Miller. Correction, is Josh Young from the Texas Rangers, third baseman. He is 60.5% rostered. If somehow he's out there, he's probably out there in half of leagues. If you need third base help, I would recommend picking him up and stashing him away on your bench or putting him in your lineup and seeing if he can help you get some wins. He does hit home runs. He steals he doesn't steal a lot of bases, but he does steal. The number 2 guy I'm going to talk about is Mariners rookie pitcher Bryce Miller. He is 36.3% rostered. If you need starting pitching help, I would pick him up in points leagues, Roto, Dynasty. Points leagues, Dynasty leagues, Roto. That's all I have to say on Bryce Miller. The next guy I'm going to talk about is Rays second baseman Brandon Lau. Yes, as you know, I am a Rays fan. And I dog Brandon Lau a lot. But credit where credit is due. He's a good defender. He also can hit some home runs. And that's the reason I have him on the waiver wire. He's 51.5, basically almost 52% rostered. If you need second base help, I would advise picking him up and stashing him on your bench, playing the matchups, and hope to see that he can bring you some power. And the next guy I'm going to talk about in the waiver wire edition, part 1, is Cardinals pitcher Jack Flaherty. Starting pitcher from the Cardinals, Jack Flaherty. Here's another guy if you need starting pitching help. I think the Cardinals are going to fall out of the race for the National League, for the Central. I know it's wide open right now, but they're in last place. I think he's a prime trade candidate to get traded somewhere else. And if you need starting pitching help, go pick him up. That's all I'm going to say on him. The next guy is Jake Berger from the White Sox. He's a third baseman / DH. He's 5.5% rostered. Go add him. Please, next time I do this, next week, every week, I'm doing 2 streams of fantasy baseball advice on Monday and Tuesdays. Next time I do this next week, let's have Jake Berger be at least right at 10% rostered. Is that a hard ask? I hope not. And the last guy I'm going to talk about for waiver wire part 1 is, yes, I know what y'all are going to say. Alec, we need wins in fantasy baseball. If you play in a Roto league and the A's don't win a lot of games. I know. The only reason I'm saying to pick up this next guy, JP Sears, starting pitcher from the A's, is not for wins. He's 14.5% rostered. I'm doing it because he eats innings. He's an innings eater. And that's another thing you need. If you get points for innings pitched in fantasy baseball, he's a guy I would pick up immediately. Okay, of course. It is starting pitcher Taj Bradley from the Tampa Bay Rays. I saw some stuff I liked from Taj in the first half. I think he needs to put that all together, and he can end up breaking out in the second half of the season. The number 2 guy I'm going to talk about for Breakout is rookie catcher from the Mets, Francisco Alvarez. And the reason he's already kind of started breaking out for the Mets, but I see him fully breaking out in the second half because he's going to get most. I know he didn't start their first game after the All-Star break. I don't know. He started the first 2 after the All-Star break and then got Sunday off. I see him hitting 30 to 35 home runs. He's almost at 20. So I think it's doable that he hits 35 home runs and drives in around 60 to 75 runs the rest of the season. Looking back at this video at the end of the year, if he does that, I'll give myself a pat on the back. If he doesn't, and he's near 25 to 30, I'll be fine with that. And then the last guy I'm going to talk about is Pirates rookie catcher Henry Davis. I think he's due for a breakout too. I know they just called up Andy Rodriguez. Henry Davis has been playing mostly right field. And here's what I think is going to happen. Henry Davis is going to stay in the outfield, and they're going to have Andy Rodriguez catch. Henry Davis is going to hit, I'm calling it now, he's going to hit 25 home runs and steal 15 bases. And he's going to drive in 60 to 75 runs for the rest of the season. And if he does, give myself a little pat on the back. If he doesn't, y'all can laugh at me in the comments and say I was wrong. I don't know what I'm talking about, but that's just how I think. Then this week, here are 4 pitchers that have 2 starts this week that I would think about using. Number 1 is Domingo Germán of the Yankees. He has 2 starts this week, the first one being tomorrow night against the Angels. And then he starts against the Royals. 2 relatively good matchups. The first one is yummy. It's the Angels without Trout, but they still have Ohtani. So that's what scares me a little bit about Germán. He won't get you strikeouts, but he will eat innings. The next 2-start pitcher I'm going to talk about is Jesus Luzardo of the Marlins. Sorry, I had a little blunder there. But Jesus Luzardo has 2 starts this week. 1 at the Cardinals and 1 versus home against the Rockies. He does get strikeouts. He gets a lot of strikeouts. And I think he's primed for a big second half. I didn't have him in the breakout column because I don't think in my book he qualified for that. But I think he's going to have a good second half. The next guy, the number 3 guy I'm going to talk about is Tarik Skubal, who also has 2 starts this week. His first one being at the Angels. And like I said about the first guy, Germán, that is a juicy good matchup. And then his second start is against the Padres, which the Padres have been hit or miss this year. They just can't get their offense going. And that's the issue they've had. They have Tatis, Soto, Machado. That's their whole offense. I mean, Trent Grisham, but Trent Grisham's not that. Honestly, let's be honest with each other. Trent Grisham's not that good. But I think he can get you at least 1 win, maybe 2 in his 2-start week. And the last guy I'm going to talk about, of course, is rookie pitcher from the Braves, Bryce Elder. He's got the Diamondbacks at home and the Brewers under. The Diamondbacks are starting to fall apart and kind of choke away to their division. And I like both these matchups for Elder. I think he could get you 2 wins and maybe at least 1 quality start, maybe 2 this week. Waiver wire players, part 2. Yes, I changed this one up a little bit too, but there's also some guys I kept on here, like the first 2. Number 1, I've talked about him the last 2 times I've done this. Fantasy baseball advice. I've talked about this guy. People, it seems like some people are listening. Some people aren't. Please go pick up Red Sox starting pitcher Brian Bayo. 40.2% rostered. He will help you win. He's not going to get a lot of strikeouts. He will get, he's another guy that'll eat innings. He's an innings eater. He does get typically between 4 to 5 strikeouts, maybe 6. Maybe you'll get lucky and there's a game where he just goes off and gets you 9, 10 strikeouts. Please pick him up. He's going to help you here in the second half. Number 2 is Ezekiel Duran from the Rangers, 30.5% roster. And he can play the infield, he can play the outfield. He is somebody I would recommend picking up. Number 3 on this list is a new guy, second baseman Zach Geloff, 2.3% rostered in fantasy baseball. I would recommend picking him up. Even if it's just to stash him on your bench in a dynasty league, to keep him away from other people in your dynasty league from picking him up. And that's all I got to say on Geloff. Number 4, this is where I've got 2 guys. I've got Twins pitcher Bailey Ober, who is 52% rostered, and Emmett Sheehan of the Dodgers, who is a rookie pitcher who is 12.2% rostered. But back to Ober. He was called up in, I believe, April, and he's stuck in the Twins rotation. There was talk of him, when Kitsa Maeda comes back, Ober's going to be the one going down. Well, no, that wasn't the case. They sent down somebody else, one of the other starters, and he's stuck in the Twins rotation, and he's been really good. He will get you strikeouts. So that's the reason I say to pick him up. And the second guy that I have at number 4 for the waiver wire is Emmett Sheehan from the Dodgers. He's a rookie pitcher, young guy. He's another guy I would say if you need help with pitching and you're in a dynasty league, go pick up and stash Emmett Sheehan to keep him away from your league mates. Because if he has a big second half, your league mates, if he's still available on the waiver wire, they're going to want to pick him up and keep him next year. Because I think the Dodgers are going to lose at least 2, maybe 3 starting pitchers. And that would leave a bunch of spots in the rotation open. And I didn't put him on here, but I would also go out and pick up and stash Emmett Sheehan's teammate, Gavin Stone. I don't know what his roster percentage is, but he's another guy I would go out and stash because I think he'll be called up as one of the 2 call-ups in September for the Dodgers. And then the last guy I'm going to talk about on the waiver wire is Pirates catcher / outfielder, Endy Rodriguez, under 1% rostered. He's another guy I would pick up and stash on your bench and just pick him up and stash him. And he's a wait and see because he's getting called up today. And same with, I didn't put his teammate on here, but Liover Peguero is another guy I'd pick up and stash on your bench to see what they do with the Pirates. And the last segment I have is my social media accounts, my Instagram and my Snapchat. Feel free to add me, follow me on Instagram, and send me your questions, comments on videos, or you can ask me questions about fantasy baseball or also fantasy football. And also add me on Snapchat, as you can do the same thing there. You can ask me questions about fantasy football, fantasy baseball. And thank you. That's the show for today.